Hello everyone, Linda Israel here, and I am going to share with you something that I do when I have a piece of paper that maybe it's just not going to work. This is a very bright pink. It looks like it's got a little bit of sun fading on it, and it's really hard to coordinate other papers and paints with this color because it's such a bright, vibrant color. So I'm going to alter this. And this is a great technique if you have some paper in your stash that you just don't like. It's ugly, you don't like the color, you don't like the text that's on it, you don't like the print, the pattern. This is a great way to do that. So I'm just doing it with a plain sheet of paper, and then I'll show you some examples of other papers that I've painted it as well. So I have just a couple of different colors and brands of craft paint. You know, usually you can get these for under $1 at most hobby stores. So this one was 97 cents when I bought it, and it's pretty old. And then we got Craftsmark and Folk Art. Then I've got just a leftover tray. It was a food tray. And what I'm going to do is just squirt a little bit of this paint. You don't need a whole bunch unless you're going to do a whole bunch of papers at one time. And that's usually what I do. I like to sit down and just paint a whole bunch of papers all at once, and not really worrying about patterns and whatnot more likely, but just getting some paint onto some paper. So I'm just putting a little bit of paint onto this palette. These are old, and so they may not all squirt out very well. So I open them up and squirt them that way, or however I can. We'll get a little bit more pink here. Now I just choose some colors that I like, that are pleasing to me, and I place them on a palette. And then I have an old gift card, a room key card, a plastic card, a heavy piece of cardboard, and then I'm just going to go into this paint and pick some of it up and swipe it onto my paper. And I'm going to do this until the whole page is covered. Another thing that I can do is I can lay a stencil down and apply paint through the stencil, and then you're going to get a neat color and texture on the paper. So you can kind of see that. And if you want to let that dry in between, you can. I'm just going to keep working here until I've got this piece of paper covered all over. Now that I've got a layer of paint all over, I'm going to lay a stencil down and just add a little bit of a print, if you will, on top of that layer of paint underneath. And then what I'll do is I will wash my tools and I'll let this paper dry. I can dry it with a heat tool or let it air dry, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. Alright, the paint is dry to touch, so it's not coming off on my hands. And when I put the stencil on, it lifted some of the paint off the paper. So if you want to prevent that, let that first layer of paint dry before you use a stencil, and then you won't have that lifting. I'm not worried about it because it's still better than this color on this side. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to stamp over the top of this. So I've got my Brutus Monroe detail ink, and I've got a couple of stamps here. This one is just a little swirl stamp. I think I picked it up at Hobby Lobby. And I'm just inking this up, and I'm going to just stamp it randomly on the page. Just any old place that I feel like. I'm not really worried about placement. A lot of this is just about having fun, just playing with your supplies and not really worrying about how it looks. So there is the first layer of stamps that I have. And what I like to do is add embossing as well to my stamped projects that I'm making like this. So I'm going to pull out some embossing powder and then show you the next step. So I have a script stamp that I really like using, and I'm going to use some ink to apply the image to the page. And I have a Versamark ink pad here, so that'll be a good embossing type pad. And I'm just going to stamp this randomly a few times on the page. And then I've got some old turquoise embossing powder. I think this was given to me. So now I'm just going to sprinkle this over the page, and then I'll tap off the excess. Embossing powder has a property in it that when it's heated, it melts, and then when it cools, it's hard, and it leaves a raised surface. And even though I put a bunch of powder on there, I've hardly used any out of this jar. It goes a long, long way. So the next thing that I'm going to do is use my heat tool and heat set this. What it'll do is it'll melt, and then it'll turn a little bit shiny. And that's how you know it's done. Some of the powder stuck to the black stamping. Some of it stuck to some of the paint that must have been just a little bit damp. I'm okay with that. I like the way this looks so far. I've got another rubber stamp here. This one is from this is from Viva Las Vegas Stamps. It's just some butterflies in a row. And I'm going to use the detail ink again and stamp over the embossing and the paint on this page just to add another layer of texture. So now I've got this pretty paper that I have created, and you're probably wondering, what am I going to do with this? Well, I'm a member of the Paper Crafters United Facebook group, and we are doing a weekly challenge. This is week 4 of the challenge, to make things from our stash, to not use digital images, and to not use scrapbook paper, pre-printed paper, if you will. So this is my pre-printed paper in that I made it myself. I printed it myself. So I'm going to make a few journaling cards or artist trading card size cards so that I can have them to pop into journals or to send with a thank you note to someone whenever I get a package in the mail. I've got this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and what I'm going to do now is trim it down to be 2.5 by 3.5 inches. I've dug around in my stash and found a scrap piece of paper that I like the color. And as you can see from cutting these down, it doesn't really matter where I stamped. We've got an interesting background when we cut it down to a smaller size. So lots of cool texture and colors on here. I've got a little punch here. This is a EK Success little label punch, and I'm just going to punch a few of these shapes out of this paper so that I can use it to put a saying on top of my card. I've got a Delusions clear stamp set, and Clearly the Right Words is, I think, the name of the stamp set. And there's one that I like that says, until you spread your wings, you have no idea how far you'll fly. So I'm loading up my Misty, and I'll put the label that I punched up in the corner here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'll take the stamp and lay it on top of the label in the center where I want it to stamp. I'll put a little magnet over the paper to hold it in place. Close the door on the Misty, and that picks up the stamp. Then I'm going to use my detail ink again. I'm going to ink up the stamp and stamp it on my paper. What I like about the Misty is if it's a brand new stamp or if the paper has texture, I can stamp it more than once and get a good impression. That turned out really nice just on the first try. I'm going to stamp these other two just so I have them done. So I'm going to pick 3 cards that I like the way they look out of this set that I've made. I'm going to use my distressed ink and black soot and a distressing tool and go around the edge of this. That'll help it pop just a little bit. And I like doing things like this instead of adding another layer of paper. When you're putting note cards and journal cards inside of a junk journal, it can get rather bulky. So if you can add a step to one of your projects without adding another layer of paper, it makes them thinner and not this big bulky mess that you can get inside your journal. So there's the card that I have blended around the edge. And now I'm just going to do the edge of this card, which helps finish it off as well. So I'm just going to use some Best Glue Ever by Scrap Perfect and add that to the back side of the punched image. And you just need a small amount. With the Scrap Perfect glue, this Best Glue Ever, it doesn't require a lot, and with this nozzle you can put just a small amount and it will stick. It dries clear and it dries quickly. And there are some journaling cards that I made today using paper that started out this color, so you can see the big difference that it makes to add some paint to that paper. And I'll show you a few other cards that I've made as well. So this was a flecked little piece of cardstock that I painted gray and stamped with black and then gold embossing powder. It says, "Change for no one and believe in who you are." And then this one is some watercolor textured paper that I stamped with some gesso, and I sprayed with some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist and some Adirondack sprays and stamped over the top with black ink and as well as embossing powder in gold. And these were some of the scraps that were left over, and I just attached those to a white piece of cardstock. And then here is the last one that I want to share, which was using some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist on top of some acrylic paint, stamping, and then embossing as well. So hopefully I've shown you an idea of how to make some artist trading cards or journaling cards to add to your journals, and possibly how to use this paper that you may not be 100% in love with. Maybe it came in a scrap pack or something. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, comment below if you have any comments or questions. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Check out the other ladies that are part of the Paper Crafters United blog hop, and the description box will show the links to their video channels. And of course, if you haven't already followed me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I am all those social medias. Check out the description box for more information. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a fabulous day. Bye.